Welcome to me, where suspenseful, thrilling, and mysterious stories will draw you into a world where the lines between reality and fantasy seem to blur. When the night falls, when all the sounds gradually quiet down, leaving only your own heartbeat and breathing, that's when these stories begin. Tensions, unsolved mysteries, moments that will make you hold your breath in fear or curiosity, all are waiting for you ahead. Find a comfortable seat, dim the lights, and let this sound guide you on a journey that is not for the faint of heart. I want each of you to leave a comment sharing where you are in the world. And if you are enjoying the episodes, don't forget to give a like and subscribe to the channel now. Relax. Are you ready? If so, join me in the first story right now. Columbine. Every night, the fog killed scores of us. The city of Metro needed a hero to protect them. And so I rose up and became the super-powered woman to save them all. I am Maverick, named for the city's most usually seen creature of flight. My civilian identity is Cora Neely. When I took up the mantle of the heroic Maverick, I left behind my former mundane life as a citizen to combat crime in all its insidious forms. I usually triumphed, earning the keys to the city. I met more than I expected when I encountered someone called Columbine. Columbine was my arch foe, a foe of extraordinary caliber, if one were afraid of clowns. She was a commedia dell'arte themed supervillain whose motive was to destroy the city of Metro, weaponizing lethal gas in the form of mist in our city every night that killed many inhabitants. Her motive was to eradicate Handcroft Laboratories, an organization responsible for medicine and chemicals, vital to Metro's health and progress. One day, I discovered a formidable truth when we battled amid the towering skyscrapers of Metro. I was having a midnight flight when she arrived, indigo-haired with matching lipstick, taunting me with maniacal laughter. Up until this moment, I had yet to meet someone so unhinged and so glaringly dangerous. We would grow close in later years, but that night, the fight was for mutual detest as much as it was about survival. "The birdie's a long way from her nest," she said in a sing-songy voice. Columbine's face was contorted into a grimacing leer behind her clown half-mask. "Metro is mine to protect," I told her. "I hail from the faraway citadel of Celestium, where we have no tolerance for common criminals such as yourself. I dare you to fly, to fight. Come and stop me," she said, firing bullets at me. My wings deflected her shots. I swooped into the air with metallic wings, shedding my trench coat. Once I reached her level, on the rooftop where she stood, I lurched forward, holding her by the neck. She pivoted, slashing at me with an intricate dagger. I dodged the blows, my wings slicing through the air. Columbine freed herself from my wrenching grasp, and we continued our battle, parrying back and forth in a vicious dance of death. She danced a vile ballet throughout the rooftops, acrobatically dodging all of the blades that I slung at her. She stepped forward and cradled my jaw, speaking in a hushed tone. Look how you're all alone in life, waiting for even more recognition for gift-wrapped victories that you never deserved, she said. Join me. This wretched city could be ours if you let it. I wrestled myself away, shaking my head at her attempt to seduce me into defeat with her carefully chosen words. Columbine knew my weakness and wasn't afraid to use it against me. You're wicked scum, I spat out. Then die alone, she said. Was it true that she was truly insane? Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, she whispered, bellowing the last word while firing more bullets at me from a vintage hand rifle. I deflected again and surged towards her, slicing her neck with my razor-sharp wing. She coughed, stumbling downward to the street below, feeling something akin to pity that I could not name. I descended and caught her, and we plummeted to the street. Columbine clutched at my collar. I leaned closer. With a trembling hang, she removed her mask to reveal patterns of acid lesions trailing from her forehead to her right jaw. There's something that you should know about Handcroft Labs. They're not the city's saving grace. They held me captive since infancy and experimented on me. They took away the closest thing I had to a father figure, disfigured my face. I'm the villain I am because of Handcroft. Stay far away. I was stunned. The same place that was about to provide an antidote to Columbine's venomous fog was what twisted her into something possibly past saving. Was she right? Unable to shake her words from my head, I flew to the nearest hospital, dropped her at the door, and set out to investigate her claims for myself. Columbine's civilian identity was that of a theatrical drama teacher. One afternoon, I visited her at her school and pleaded with her to cease the toxic nightly mist. She relented with downcast eyes. What are you really here for? She asked. You, I said softly. I want to make sure that you're all right after. Well, let's forget the homicidal pleasantries. I found out that you're right about Handcroft. Turns out that they're up to more harmful things than just university science projects. So, you believe me? Asked Columbine. We'll see, but it's a start, I said. Cora, listen to me. When this thing, she gestured to her mask, this Columbine thing takes over, I can't control. No worries, I said, trying to understand her in some way. This city I used to put on a spectacle pits us against each other. It's outside both of our control. As time went on, we continued our game of fighting and alternately reconciling, with no conclusive winner every time. Sometimes I let her get away. Other times, she purposely ceased to slay me. She was right about Handcroft, so we joined forces to end their schemes forever. Having succeeded, we became more than hero and villain. we were connected by a common goal. Months later, we grew closer, me and Columbine. At one time, I woke up and got out of bed to find that she wasn't in my room anymore. There was a note. Dear Cora, I can't keep up this charade anymore. I have to go after an enemy of yours on my own. I'm sorry. Columbine Claude XOXO. I wept for hours at losing someone I had fought alongside to save our city. When my tears ceased to fall, there was one thing I knew for certain: that I would hunt Columbine down from every corner of the earth until I found her. My search would continue. The couple in the glass. The first time she saw them, she didn't think too much of it. Just an exceptionally attractive, well-dressed couple having dinner together in their multi-million-dollar penthouse while overlooking downtown Chicago. Bev Thomas watched them from the balcony of the apartment, hidden away in the shadows of the night, wondering what it must be like. The apartment she was currently cleaning for work was cherry enough, but nothing compared to the place these two lived in. She'd studied them, admired them, became invested in them, but never once did it occur to her during that first sighting that anything was wrong. The woman wasn't just beautiful, she was elegant. Elegant in the way that women just weren't anymore. Audrey Hepburn, Grace Kelly, Jackie Kennedy. Women who embodied class, charm, and fashion. The woman in the window looked as though she belonged on that same list, regardless of the fact that she was completely unknown to Bev. She wasn't a celebrity, wasn't an actress or a singer, and Bev didn't recognize her from the world of politics. She was just a stunning, refined, angelic individual who looked as though she'd descended from heaven itself to grace the earth with her beauty. She wore a ball gown of sorts, pale yellow, and doused in what Bev could only imagine were real diamonds from the way the material shimmered. Bev couldn't help but allow the jealousy to set in. How could one person have it all? If her looks weren't enough, there was the man seated across from her. He was unrealistically handsome. She was convinced he'd had work done to make him look that way, like he'd just arrived from a factory somewhere. But inside, she doubted it. Something about his face told her it was all natural. He landed somewhere between Paul Newman and Henry Cavill. From the Newman side came the piercing blue eyes, so deep in color that Bev could see them clearly from the balcony across the boulevard. The stubble of a full beard gave him the timeless, rugged quality. But then came the Cavill features. A strong, chiseled jaw, a full head of wavy auburn hair, and a physique that looked as though Michelangelo had risen from the dead and carved it himself. Bev's life could have stayed perfectly normal if it had only been that one time, but it hadn't. She cleaned that apartment 5 nights a week for an owner that was in town once a year, and every single night she found them in that exact same spot, just looking at each other. The second time, she found herself talking out loud about it. After all, it was just her. The walls weren't going to be critical of her self-monologue. The hell are they doing? Every night? She whined as she dusted away at the shelving and priceless decor. If I had money like that, I'd never cook another thing ever again. Then it occurred to her, and she nodded to herself at the realization. Probably a personal chef brings the 5-star menu to their front door. Unbelievable. She watched them as they ate, trying to imagine what the steak and asparagus tasted like when you were that well off. But from what she could tell, they didn't seem to enjoy it all that much. Probably eat like royalty so much that the glamour wore off, she'd thought. She'd forced herself to ignore them after that for the entirety of the second night. It was when she arrived for her shift on the third evening that the situation started to feel off. Something just wasn't quite right about them. Third night in a row, and there they were, seating by the window, candlelit dinner, and champagne. It was like watching someone's anniversary on a loop. That night, she didn't ignore them. That night, she actually moved a chair from the other side of the living room to the window where she could make herself comfortable as she stalked. She began to realize small details about them. Their clothing had changed, but their expressions were exactly the same. Stoic. As she watched their rendezvous unfold, she noticed that neither of them took a single bite of their meals or a solitary sip of their wine. Odd. Then there was Prince Charming's facial hair. The stubble had been there to begin with, but now the shadow of a budding neck beard was now showing. He hadn't shaved in a few days. It wasn't all that peculiar, but something about the couple told Bev that these weren't the kind of people who let hygiene go unattended. It was like the thing in the photo, not like the others. As she studied their faces, she noticed that they both looked exhausted, like they hadn't slept much. The final observation she made was that they never moved from those seats. When they did shift in place or push food around on their plates, their movements were subtle, almost careful. It became almost irritating for Bev. At first, she'd enjoyed daydreaming about what their world must be like, but now the show was becoming a bore. She moved the chair back to its spot on the other side of the room and ignored them as best she could for the rest of her shift. But when she returned for the 4th and 5th night that week, she found them there still, staring at each other and never moving. Saturday and Sunday she had off, but her mind was completely occupied by that couple across the way. It bothered Bev so much that Monday morning she decided to do a little detective work. She didn't have names to go on, so she went about finding them out. She made calls, did some internet searches, even sorted through city and county records to get any information that she could. It took her most of the day, but she finally found something. The penthouse on the 42nd floor on the left-hand wing belonged to a man named Doug Allen. He was some sort of financial wizard and had obtained an enormous amount of wealth day trading. From what Bev could tell, he'd never been married. Must be a girlfriend, she thought. But then she called the front desk of the building the penthouse was in and discovered that Mr. Allen hadn't used his personal entry sensor or code in over a month. When she went in to clean the apartment that night, they were there again, sitting by the window, looking like a set of puppets. It was too much for Bev. She was too invested. She made her way across to their building and waited outside until a stranger walked in, walking in behind them and onto the elevator as if she belonged. Thankfully, the ladies at reception were fully engaged in a conversation about the latest episode of Yellowstone and hadn't noticed. When she arrived on the 42nd floor, she found herself in a hallway that offered only 4 options. 1 penthouse door for each wing of the building. She approached their door and immediately noticed the "Do Not Disturb" placard that hung beside it. She was so nervous, she was shaking. But this couple had completely polluted her days and nights. She had to know what was going on if she ever wanted to get back to reality. She didn't know what she would say when they answered, but she decided she would figure it out as she went. She knocked once with the intention of doing it a second and third time, but when her knuckles connected with the door, it inched open slightly. It hadn't been properly latched. She looked at the opening for over a minute, trying to decide what to do. Clearly, they hadn't heard the knock, as no one came to the door to confront her. Surprising even to herself, she was actually considering letting herself in just enough to get a glimpse. She decided against the idea initially, but as she reached for the knob to close the door, she couldn't help herself. She shifted it open a little further, just enough to see inside. There was a small table in the center, and on the top were dozens of photos and documents. She'd come this far. She needed something to satisfy her insatiable interest. She approached the table and began to peruse the contents. The photos were all of the couple in the window, but the images were all from afar, as if whoever had taken them had done so without their knowledge. Bev's stomach started to turn as she read through the documents. Every one a piece of evidence. Evidence of an affair. It wasn't the affair itself that unsettled her. It was the fact that someone had collected evidence of it and had compiled it right here in the home of the man involved. She set the papers down and began to take steps backward as quietly as she could. But a noise behind her forced her to a complete stop. "You shouldn't be here," he said. Bev was frozen, the fear infiltrating every cell. She was caught. But that wasn't what frightened her. It was what she had walked into. She turned slowly, being careful to control her movements. As she did, she found herself face to face with the barrel of a pistol. The man holding it was calm, but in a way, perplexed. Like he wasn't sure exactly what to do with this discovery. "I'm sorry," she started to say. What are you doing here? You shouldn't be here. I cleaned the apartment across the street, and She couldn't find the words, and any she did came out mumbled through her now shaking lips. She'd never seen a gun in person before, much less had one trained on her face. She couldn't think, and she could hardly breathe. He raised his free hand and rubbed his forehead as if working through a complicated mathematical equation. "Move," he said. "What?" "I said move. Into the dining room," he said, waving the gun in the direction she was to go. She did as she was told, inadvertently holding her hands in the air like she was under arrest. She knew it was silly. She would have felt much better if a police officer were detaining her versus what she was currently experiencing. As she emerged into the dining room, the couple she'd been watching for over a week came into view. They had to hear her enter, but they didn't dare move, and Bev believed she already knew why. "Douglas, Denise, we have an unexpected guest," he said. Still, they didn't move. Bev waited for a verbal confirmation that they were even alive. But then she saw the woman he'd called Denise's throat catch slightly as she fought to control her breathing. "I think introductions are in order. Why don't you go first?" he said, poking Bev in the back with the gun. I'm Bev Thomas. I just cleaned the apartment across the street. Perhaps you'd like to tell us exactly why you've intruded upon our evening of wonders and romance. Bev Thomas. I noticed them having dinner in the same spot all last week, and You were nosy, the man said, finishing her sentence. I was concerned. You didn't mean what? To break into this apartment? To impose somewhere you weren't welcome? But you did it anyway, didn't you? Bev Thomas. You know what, though? That's okay. You see, you and I are a lot alike. Curious. You were curious about this beautiful couple. So was I. You can imagine just how curious I was when I discovered that my wife of 15 years was having an affair with a wealthier, more attractive, and apparently more adventurous man. Bev didn't know what to say. Her fears were being confirmed, but that didn't bring her a single ounce of relief. For once, she wished she'd been wrong. Since they can't answer for themselves, allow me to complete the introductions. Douglas Allen, my wife's new lover. My darling wife, Denise. As for me, my name is about as important as our marriage was to my whore of a wife. Again, Bev stayed quiet. You must be wondering what exactly you happened upon tonight. Bev Thomas, let me illuminate you. You see, I have been tracking this forbidden love affair for over 2.5 years. Every meetup, every email, every middle-of-the-night phone call that my wife took from the downstairs bathroom as if I wouldn't hear. Everything. I was so moved by the greatest love story ever told that I figured, why not recreate it? Let the lovebirds live through it all one more time. We've been at it for weeks, Bev. Day and night. Every dinner date, every intimate conversation, every single moment of sexual engagement, all of it on replay, like a show on Broadway. The obvious difference is an audience of only one to enjoy it, he said, referring to himself. She doesn't have anything to do with this, Mike. Just let her leave. Denise's sudden outburst startled Bev so much that she almost jumped. The woman in the window had finally broken her silence. The man called Mike was still behind her, so Bev couldn't see his face. Even so, she could feel the anger radiating off him like heat from a bonfire. What is the rule, Denise? What is the fucking rule? She didn't respond, nor did she look away from Doug Allen. Her face was expressionless, but her eyes told the story all on their own. It was clear to Bev that Denise was overrun with fear. She'd messed up, and she knew it. Bev flinched as Mike's footsteps met her ears. He moved around her, making his way toward Denise, slowly and methodically, like a hungry tiger closing in on a wounded antelope. I asked you a question, he said calmly as he arrived at the table. Again, she refused to answer. Mike sighed heavily and pulled something from his pocket. Before it registered what he had retrieved, the blade of the folding knife had flipped open and had been driven through Doug's hand, nailing it to the tabletop. Doug screamed out in pain, and Denise did the same. All the fear, anger, and misery exploding out of her. Look what you made me do, you whore. You worthless bitch. You couldn't follow a simple set of fucking rules. Don't break character. Ever. You've ruined the entire sequence. When he was done, he collected himself and turned back to Bev. She expected he was about to explain the rules of engagement in this little game he'd created. But he stopped realizing what he had done. Years of tracking, months of planning, weeks of playing out his fantasy of revenge, and he'd never made a mistake. Until now, he turned back around as quickly as he could, but it was too late. Denise had already pulled the knife from Doug's hand. As his front side became exposed, she drove the knife deep into his chest. He gasped and began to stumble backwards. She followed him onto the floor, where she pulled the blade out and then stuck it in again. Then again, and again. Doug nursed his wounded hand, and Bev watched, frozen in time, as the slaughter ensued. When she no longer had the strength to pull the knife out, and Mike was fighting for his last few breaths, she moved up to his head and whispered something in his ear. His eyes went wide, then slowly shut, as the final bit of life departed from his body. What happened next was a whirlwind of police sirens, flashing lights, EMTs, and crime scene technicians. People in uniform taking Bev's statement again and again. Paramedics checking her for injuries, the flash of cameras as evidence was documented and collected inside the penthouse. She couldn't bring herself to say much of anything, but she hung on every word as Doug and Denise detailed what they had been through while captives of a madman, driven to the edge of sanity by pure rage and jealousy. When the police had finished their questions, and just before the pair were swept off by an ambulance to receive further medical attention at the hospital, Bev had time to ask one single question. She approached the back of the ambulance and looked up into Denise's eyes. "There is so much I don't understand. I'm glad you're both okay. But what did you say to him?" At the end, Denise smiled to herself, like she was about to reveal a childhood secret she'd always promised to take to the grave. She leaned down close so that she could whisper and still be audible. "I told him the truth, that Doug and I knew he was following us for months, and we kept at it anyways. I told him that it made it that much more exciting that he was seeing everything we were doing, and it just made us want to do it that much more. I told him that, and I told him that the only thing better than Doug and I tearing into each other with him knowing was doing it all over again in front of his pathetic face." Before she could say anything more, the paramedics came and secured the doors. Bev watched, speechless, as the ambulance pulled away. Since she didn't have any injuries, she didn't need to go to the hospital. Instead, she went back to the apartment she was supposed to be cleaning. Lost in thought, she wandered over to the window, looking up to an empty table in the penthouse across the street, where she'd first seen the couple in the glass, the unspoken relative. The door to the interrogation room creaked open. A girl was inside, still in the depths of REM sleep, did not stir. Sleep was all she had, her only escape and only therapy from her current fate. She remained curled up on top of the table like a feline, conserving her energy before the hellhounds would be turned loose on her. Haley, a psychiatrist, made her way into the room. She could see the subject. Emily had insomniac circles around her eyes that made her look like a raccoon almost. Haley felt bad for having to wake her, but if Emily wanted sleep, she would need to talk at some point. She reached out and took Emily's hands in hers. They were calm and clammy. Emily emitted a faint whimper, but her eyes remained closed. Haley let go of her hands and brushed Emily's hair. Emily stirred, and her eyes sluggishly opened. Her dark eyes, with saucers for pupils, studied the green emeralds Haley had for eyes. They remained still, watching, then closed again. "Come on, hun. Time to get up." Haley spoke, lightly shaking her. Emily whimpered and covered her face with her arms. Haley stood and scooped her off the table. She expected a fight, but Emily remained docile in her grasp. Before Haley could put her down, Emily clung to her and rested her head on Haley's shoulder. It was difficult to imagine Emily was capable of what the police were accusing her of. Emily was acting more like an 8-year-old than 18. That could be cracked up to the recent traumatic experience she endured. She had recently learned who her real father was, after he took her mother, and stepfather hostage. Her mother was currently recovering from injuries in the hospital, while her stepfather had succumbed to his injuries. Emily wailed suddenly, catching Haley off guard. The reaction was so sudden that Haley almost dropped her. "Honey," Emily buried her face in Haley's chest, with heaving sobs that made her tremble all over. Haley rubbed her back and comforted her, something that Emily never got from anyone since they found her in the house. She had passed out with the landline phone still in her grasp, with a split table beneath her that broke her fall. Haley had a job to do here, however, and that was not to comfort a possible suspect. Haley gently pried her off and sat Emily down in a chair. "I'm going to be honest," Haley began. "They suspect you conspired with your father." All the melanin drained from Emily's skin. This couldn't be happening. She quickly shook her head in denial. Emily strained herself, attempting to protest, but her voice cracked, and her words died in her throat. "You may want to see this," Haley said, handing her a tablet. A frightened moan escaped her mouth when the video started playing. When Emily learned the truth, she attacked and interrogated her stepfather in the basement for putting a wool over her eyes, while her real father was otherwise engaged upstairs. And now, law enforcement suspected she was hiding her father's whereabouts. They intended to use this footage as leverage against her if she refused to cooperate. Her knees drew up to her chest as reality washed over her. His blood was on her hands too, whether she liked it or not. But this didn't mean that she conspired with her father. They needed to know that. Emily tried to speak again, but like before, her words could not reach the surface. Like baby sea turtles being plucked away by famished seagulls before reaching the ocean, words still eluded her. She buried her face in her hands, sighing shakily. Haley placed a small notebook before her along with a pencil. Emily sniffled and started to write. "So, he took your cuffs off for good behavior? Haley asked. Emily nodded. And after you found out the truth, you became angry with your stepfather? Emily replied with a reluctant nod. She wrote her next question with a trembling hand. There's nothing I can do to avoid prison, is there? Emily pushed the notebook over to Haley, with tears starting to trickle down her face again. You can tell me where he is? Haley said. Emily whimpered in frustration. I don't know where he is, because I did not conspire with him. She wrote, It's not up to me on what happens to you, Haley began. But you need to give them something if you wish to avoid prison. Even if you didn't conspire with him, you still assaulted your stepfather, who is now dead. Emily huffed and snatched the notebook. My father's gun killed him, not me, she wrote. You stabbed your stepfather with a fork. He already had a severed leg and a missing finger, which I believe had his wedding ring on it. You very well could have. Do you think a jury would let you go free after that? Emily choked back a sob. I'm sorry, hun. I know you were under a great deal of stress, but that still does not excuse your actions. He's one of my teachers in high school, okay? Mr. Black is what he goes by. I'm sure that's how he found out that I was his daughter. Emily wrote, Okay, maybe that will help them find him. Anything else? Haley asked. Please, I need to be there for my mom, so she pulls through. Emily wrote, I'll see what they think about this, Haley said, taking the notebook with her. But after what you did to your stepfather, I doubt you'll be allowed to see your mother in the hospital. It's for her own safety. Emily's face fumed in disbelief at what she heard. With that, Haley left her to sit alone with her thoughts. 2. When the sheriff entered the interrogation room, Emily's heart sank like an anchor to the depths. She sheepishly wiped her tears away with her sleeves. Save your crocodile tears for another day, his eyes said. You'll be held at a local hotel under house arrest till your court date, the sheriff said, attaching a tracker to her ankle. You can use the phone inside the motel to call your mother in the hospital. Perhaps that will help you find your voice again. Better pray you find it by your court date. He continued, escorting her out. 3. On court day, her mother was not well enough to attend. However, she was thankfully still alive and recovering. Emily quietly sat next to her appointed lawyer. The judge and jury were informed that, due to the events Emily had been through, she had trouble speaking, and her lawyer would speak for her. They had given her a notebook and pen to use to communicate as well. Emily was prepared to own up to what she did, however. The crowd was certainly a surprise, which threw her off. She hoped it stemmed from curiosity about her father, rather than hatred towards her. She nervously watched as the judge made his way to the podium. He was an older gentleman with a horseshoe mustache that commanded respect. A man with true grit that would not hesitate to punish any poor soul that dared question his authority. To the full extent of the law, he despised any scumbag attorney that would willingly fight for a defendant that was obviously guilty. Emily could not tell what his initial impression was of her just yet. Take your seats, ladies and gentlemen. Let's be mindful of the jury and the defendant. Keep y'all's voices down so they can hear themselves think. The judge spoke as the jury filed in. Emily reluctantly turned to see who her selected peers would be. 6 women of varying ages filed in first. Perhaps she had a chance of being shown mercy after all. 6 men followed, and suddenly her throat felt deprived of oxygen, and her eyes dilated like saucers. The word escaped her lips, and she quickly covered her mouth with both hands. But the room had grown silent as a Buddhist temple. It was too late. What was that, miss? The judge spoke, making her flinch. Emily quickly turned away from the jury and spoke for what felt like the first time in weeks. Nothing. Sorry. She spoke with an awkward rise in her voice. Mind repeating what you said a moment ago? I was under the impression that you didn't speak. The judge said. Objection, Your Honor. Her attorney stepped in. Overruled. You were saying, miss? The judge spoke. Emily swallowed hard, and her skin was as crimson as a lobster. Much like a lobster, she was in hot water now as well. Do you want to be held in contempt for lying to the court about your condition? The judge asked. No, I'm not, she hiccuped. Lying. Enlighten me on how you did not lie to the court, miss. The judge pressed. Your Honor, I made it clear she has difficulty speaking, and that she is, or in this case, was temporarily mute. The key word was temporarily. Her attorney spoke clearly. She speak for herself now, mister. Now would you or she care to repeat what her first spoken word was, so we can move forward with this case? The judge replied. Objection, Your Honor. Her attorney spoke before Emily placed her hand on his wrist. Overruled. The judge spoke to him. Please, Emily said to her attorney before standing to face the judge. I saw someone that looked like my dad. That's all. I'm mistaken, obviously. But it took me by surprise. So, we have it on record. Repeat the exact word you spoke for me, miss. I will not ask you again. The judge said. Daddy, that's what I said. I was mistaken. Sorry, Your Honor. Emily spoke meekly. Why don't you point out the individual you mistook for him? Would you kindly? The judge spoke. A small trickle ran between her legs, and Emily winced, hating herself. In fact, why don't we show everyone what her father looks like? Shall we? The judge said. And a projector flashed a picture of Mr. Black on the wall behind him. This is the man responsible for the death of Emily's stepfather and for her mother, who is currently in hospice care. What we are here for currently, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, is to figure out whether Emily knows of his whereabouts, and 2, whether she conspired with him against her stepfather. The judge spoke. Now isn't that a load of horse shit? A voice cackled. A man in the jury stood, and Emily's fears were confirmed. His disguise could fool most, but not her. You think she's capable of this? Hell, she couldn't even keep it together when she caught a glance of my face. Mr. Black laughed, pressing his revolver against another juror, urging them to walk up with him. The police officers and security guards all drew their weapons, but Mr. Black revealed his own weapon that was strapped to his chest. There was a rise of panic from the bystanders and the jury. Enough! The judge roared, and the crowd simmered down. As the Joker once said, "Let's not blow this out of proportion. I'll only take a moment of your time, one way or another." Mr. Black said, "You've got balls showing your face around here." The judge spoke, "I'm just here to make sure an innocent person doesn't go to jail. Lord knows the law has a way of fucking that up." Mr. Black replied, "I propose an exchange then. You go to jail while she goes free. That, I reckon, is how it should have been all along." The judge said, "Ha! You should go on stage and see how far that joke gets ya." Mr. Black cackled. "What's the plan here? What's your end game?" The judge asked. "It's simple. If you all want to live, you let us leave quietly. Remember, the juror I replaced is elsewhere, awaiting your assistance." Mr. Black said. The judge, a veteran from the war in Afghanistan, recognized the bomb Mr. Black had strapped to his chest. It was capable of taking out a whole block. Everyone inside this building would be cooked like a Thanksgiving turkey when all was said and done. "Drop y'all's weapons," the judge ordered. The officers followed suit. "Let's be on our way, Emily." Mr. Black spoke. A frightened moan escaped her mouth. She had no idea her father was capable of this. He would be labeled as a terrorist in the news. There was no coming back from that. "Don't waste my time, sweetheart," Mr. Black hissed, pressing his revolver against the juror's forehead. Emily whimpered and reluctantly stood up. "Can you tell me where the other juror is before you go?" the judge asked. "Good man," Mr. Black said, opening the door to the judge's quarters. Through there was a quick exit to the parking lot. I left a note with an address under my juror seat. If anyone stops me, that place will blow too, Mr. Black said. Emily gagged as her nerves started getting the better of her. This was all too much to take in. But Mr. Black tugged her inside by the collar of her shirt, urging her to keep moving, and they ran to the exit door. Outside, there were 2 cars waiting for them. Mr. Black shoved his hostage to the floor and slammed the door shut behind him. Emily eyed both cars in confusion. She yelped when she felt something hot sting her arm. Emily looked up at her father as everything around her grew brighter. "Why?" she whimpered. "Can't risk you having second thoughts," Mr. Black replied with a wink, removing the small needle from her arm. Emily was too weak to resist when he laid her down in the back seat of a Chrysler 300. He rode in a different car, and she passed out before they drove away. 4. Emily awoke with a start in what felt like another lifetime. She was cocooned in a hammock, ready to hatch into a new life, it seemed. Her sluggish eyes registered a clustered forest of coconut palms around her, and a man sitting at a nearby table. He wore a straw hat and was sipping on a pina colada. "Welcome back," Mr. Black said. The ocean was a shimmering shade of teal in the sunlight, roaring in the distance. "Is Mom okay?" Emily slurred. "She'll be fine," Mr. Black said, "but she'll need her distance for some time before she forgives us." The Unnatural Diary. Part 1. The Unintended Discovery. Dust swirled in the dim light as Sarah pushed aside a stack of brittle newspapers, her fingers brushing against something unexpected, soft, worn leather. She reached into the box of forgotten books and relics, pulling free an old, weathered diary. Its edges were frayed with time, the cover nearly stripped of its once proud embossing, now smooth and cool beneath her touch. A faint residue of salt clung to its surface, as if it had weathered years of quiet decay or been touched by the sea itself. Intrigued, she carefully pried it open near the middle, where thick, textured pages crackled with age. The paper felt different, denser than usual, almost like parchment. The ink, though faded, carried an unusual shimmer, as if the words still pulsed with some lingering energy, revealing a chilling passage. I had to move quickly, but the floorboards betrayed me, groaning beneath my steps as I crept through the darkened hall. It was close. I could feel its snarling breath, cold and damp, seeping through the walls, making them feel thinner than they were. The air was thick with the weight of its presence. I had to make it to the kitchen. I had to get to the closest bag of consecrated salt before it was too late. A shiver ran down Sarah's spine. The words read like a story, yet something about them felt strangely real and weren't meant to entertain, but to warn. She flipped another page, the dry parchment whispering as it moved, and something slipped loose. A note, a single yellowed slip of paper, fluttered to the attic floor. Sarah bent to retrieve it, her pulse quickening as she read the hastily scrawled words. "If you've found this, it already knows. It already knows?" The words sent a shiver down Sarah's spine. What does that mean? What already knows? Shaking off the unease, she set the diary aside, convincing herself it was just a very old diary. Nothing more. She returned to cleaning, determined to finish the task before indulging her curiosity. Later, with the attic finally organized, Sarah sank into the old desk chair she had recently dusted off and pulled from the corner. It paired well with an antique desk she had just cleaned off, a piece that had likely sat buried beneath clutter for years. Exhaustion giving way to curiosity, she reached for the diary, opening it to the first page. Her fingers brushing over the worn pages, coming to the inside of the cover, where a passage so intimate, it felt as though she was intruding on something deeply personal, was scrawled in elegant handwriting. To my beautiful Colette, may the enchantment of these pages cradle your precious memories and bridge the distance between us, keeping our hearts forever intertwined. With eternal love, Roderick Shadowthorn of Moonvale Hollow. Beneath the inscription, in a more delicate script, another line had been added, given to me by my love on Saturday, February 28th, 1953. Sarah's pulse quickened. The names, Roderick Shadowthorn, Moonvale Hollow, felt almost otherworldly, like something plucked from a forgotten fairy tale. Sarah turned to the first entry, March 2nd, 1953. My dearest new diary. I am excited to begin writing. I can scarcely believe my fortune. Has it only been weeks since I met Roderick? It feels as though I have known him forever, as though our souls recognized one another long before our eyes had ever met. He is unlike anyone I have ever known. His presence is both briskly confident and gentle, and his words laced with a wisdom as though he has seen lifetimes beyond my own. Fascinates me. When I am with him, the world feels richer and brighter, as if I have stepped beyond the veil and into something wondrous. His world is unlike anything I could have imagined. Mystical, brimming with enchantment and secrets woven through everything there. He speaks of things I cannot yet comprehend, yet I believe every word. When he takes my hand, I swear I can feel the pulse of something ancient and powerful. He calls himself a hermit, or rather, that's what others call him. But to me, he is nothing short of extraordinary. Everything about him is mesmerizing. His long, dark waves that frame his face, the depth of his warm brown eyes, and oh, the way he looks at me, as if I am the only thing that exists in his world. It sends my heart racing, my breath catching in my throat. I have never felt so seen, so cherished. If this is love, then let me remain lost in it forever. I do not know what the future holds, nor how we will balance our lives together. But I know I wish to be with Roderick forever, and I will follow wherever this enchantment leads. Forever hopeful, Colette. Wow. Sarah exhaled the word, unable to stop the tinge of jealousy creeping into her voice. To feel that in love, to be cherished like that. She had once known that feeling, back when she and Neil were still wrapped in the bliss of their early days. But those days had faded, worn thin by time and disappointment, until all that remained was silence and a divorce finalized 3 years ago. Now, her world revolved around work, the occasional night out with friends, and a growing reluctance to let anyone get too close again. She shook off the thought and turned the page, only to feel as though something else was guiding her hand. The diary fell open to a blank page, yet at the top, written in the same elegant script, a date had already been inscribed. March 15th, 2025. Sarah's breath hitched. Her pulse pounded in her ears. That's today's date. She stumbled back, nearly losing her balance. Her mind raced for an explanation, but none made sense. The diary was old, decades old. How could this be? A chill swept through the attic, and she rubbed her arms, trying to shake the unease pressing against her chest. It's just a coincidence, a weird, creepy coincidence. Forcing a nervous laugh, she muttered, "Okay, that's enough reading for today. I just need a shower, food, and..." Before she could finish, a brilliant light erupted from the diary, flooding the attic in a blinding radiance. The air crackled, thick with an energy she could feel rushing over her skin. A high-pitched hum filled her ears as the pages of the diary flared open, their edges glowing with an unnatural heat. Sarah barely had time to scream before the light consumed her. Then, silence. The attic stood empty. The diary lay undisturbed on the desk. A new entry had appeared on the once blank page. March 15th, 2025. I could sense a release. The connection to her world is back. It seems different somehow. Oh, how I can't wait to see her again. What is this? She opened it? Who is she? She has dared to open Colette's diary. She will answer for this. She will. The sentence trailed off, the ink still wet, as if waiting to be finished. Part 2. The Vanished Sister. As the last of the evening sun faded into a moonless sky, Gloria settled in beside her husband, the familiar hum of their favorite television show filling the room. The night was calm, uneventful, until the phone shattered the quiet with a sharp trill. Gloria glanced at the caller ID. A slight frown creased her brow. Miranda? Sarah's friend? Why would she be calling? Perplexed, she rose from the couch, murmuring to her husband, "I'll be right back." Pressing the phone to her ear, she answered hesitantly. "Hello? Miranda? Hey, Gloria. I'm sorry for calling so late." Miranda's voice wavered, the hesitation in her tone setting Gloria instantly on edge. "I got your number from Sarah's records," and Gloria's throat tightened. Sarah's records? We were wondering if everything was okay with her. She hasn't been to work in about a week, and we're starting to get worried. We've tried calling, leaving messages, but she hasn't answered. This isn't like her at all. And Miranda hesitated before continuing, her voice barely above a whisper. She missed an important deadline for a major project on Wednesday. Gloria gripped the phone tighter. Sarah? Missing work? Ignoring calls? Failing to meet a deadline? The words barely registered as the realization slowly settled into fear. She hadn't spoken to her sister in nearly 2 weeks. That wasn't unusual for them. Life had a way of pulling them in different directions, but Sarah not showing up for work and no word to anyone, that was impossible. That was not Sarah, and suddenly, the quiet night didn't feel so peaceful anymore. The familiar rhythm of her world began to close in. Where is my sister? By the time the police got involved, Gloria had already exhausted every possible explanation. Even Sarah's ex-husband Neil had flown into town, trying to find out what he could from their mutual acquaintances and his family in the area. But the more they searched, the deeper the mystery became. There were no signs of forced entry, no struggle, no evidence of foul play. Sarah's car remained parked in the driveway. Her purse sat neatly on the dining table, car keys beside it. The house, meticulously arranged, just as she always kept it. Security footage only deepened the mystery. The last recording showed Sarah arriving home from work last Friday, locking the door behind her, and then nothing. No one entered. No one left, leaving the house feeling eerily undisturbed, as if she had vanished without a trace. Her co-workers, Amalia and Miranda, had been the first to raise the alarm. They knew their friend would not miss work, especially not a major deadline, not without calling, not without an explanation. This was an impossibility for someone as methodical and precise as Sarah. So where had she gone? Then there was the opened diary in the attic, sitting on the antique desk in the attic. Its cracked leather cover bore the weight of years. It wasn't Sarah's. Gloria knew that much. The pages, thick and time-worn, had been left open as if abandoned in haste. And there, scrawled in elegant yet unsettling handwriting, was a date, March 15th, 2025, last Saturday, the day after Sarah was last seen. The police had skimmed through the diary, dismissing it as nothing more than an old journal Sarah had stumbled upon. Perhaps she had been reading it, maybe even planning to write something inspired by it. After all, she had only moved into the house last October. The previous owner, a woman in her 90s, had passed away the year before, and her children had taken what little they wanted. Antiques, heirlooms, family photographs. The rest had been left behind in their rush to sell the house. But as Gloria sat at the old antique desk staring at the diary, unease slithered through her. She reached for it hesitantly, fingers grazing the worn leather cover. A whisper of movement stirred the air, though the room was still. The moment she picked up the book, a chill pricked deep in her bones. Something told her that Sarah hadn't just disappeared. She had been taken. Part 3, the final entry. Taking a steadying breath, Gloria flipped through the pages, only to have them land on the last recorded entry again. March 15th, 2025. I could sense a release. The connection to her world is back. It seems different somehow. Oh, how I can't wait to see her again. What is this? She opened it? Who is she? She has dared to open Colette's diary. She will answer for this. She will... The ink shimmered in shifting, iridescent hues of black and blue, as if the words were still being formed, not yet complete. A low hum vibrated through the attic, the air thickening with something unnatural. Gloria clenched her jaw. An aching sense of dread settled in her chest. This wasn't just a diary. This was something else. Something supernatural. Sarah, what did you do? With a deep breath, she turned the page. And March 20th, 2025. She keeps running again. I'll find her again. She will tell me where Colette is. She does not belong. She is not Colette. She fights, but she cannot escape. She will stay. If I cannot have my Colette, I found her again. She hides. These people cannot protect her from me. She is strong, but endurance lasts only so long. Gloria's stomach twisted. Sarah was alive, but she wasn't just missing. She was trapped. Somewhere beyond this world, desperation clawed at her chest. There had to be something, some way to help Sarah. Flipping frantically through the brittle pages, she stopped when she found an entry dated April 10th, 1956. The ink was uneven, smudged in places, as though written in haste. April 10th, 1956. I have kept it at bay with consecrated salt. I believe I have found a way to seal this diary. It was forged by Roderick's own hands, a doorway between both worlds. It seems impossible to destroy, but I must protect my husband, my children. The salt has bound the door. He cannot come through that way again. I did love him once, but what he was becoming, now he is lost to rage and darkness. No longer the man I loved. He is something else now. A vile creature. I pray no one ever finds this diary. I have been told, soak cloth in sea salt. Wrap the diary within it. The realms will be severed. If this works, this will be my last entry. If it doesn't, God help me. The smudged words ended abruptly. Gloria's hands trembled as she closed the diary. She knew what she had to do. Colette had sealed the diary once before. Gloria would do it again. Gloria searched the attic, her hands trembling, looking for any salt that may have been left. Thankfully, Sarah had cleaned and organized the space not too long ago, making it easier to find what she needed. But would it work? Would it not only seal the diary, but also bring Sarah back? Her fingers brushed against something cool and metallic. An old tin can with the words "consecrated salt" embossed on its worn surface. Inside, a thick, heavy bag of salt remained untouched. Waiting, anxious, Gloria quickly opened the diary to the most recent entry. Her heart pounded as she poured a thick line of salt down the center of the open pages, then traced a protective circle around it. She didn't know what she was doing, but she had to do something. It had already been a week since Sarah disappeared. The air shifted. A strange, oppressive stillness pressed down on the attic. Then, the diary lifted off the desk, A plume of smoke curled from its pages as an eerie glow pulsed from within. The pages flared open, flipping wildly as a gust of wind erupted through the attic. Bolts of crackling light shot from the diary, slamming into the wooden beams and shaking the very foundation of the house. Gloria stumbled back, shielding her face as the attic groaned, the walls pulsating as if the house itself were alive. Then, a scream, low and guttural, full of rage and loss, a scream that was not human. And just as suddenly as it began, everything stilled. The diary dropped to the floor with a final thud, its edges slightly singed. The attic fell silent, the air refreshed into somewhat normalcy. Gloria hesitated before stepping forward. The diary lay motionless, its pages now eerily still. A single final entry had appeared. March 21st, 2025. She is gone. My Colette has left me. I am nothing without her. Oh, Colette. I am so sorry. I loved you so. I waited. You never came. I am no more, finally, released from my agony. Then, without warning, the diary slammed shut. Gloria's breath caught. Where is Sarah? Please, give me my sister back, she cried, voice breaking. A soft thud echoed from downstairs. Heart pounding, Gloria bolted down the steps. And there, lying in the center of the living room, was Sarah. Dazed, shaken, a little battered, but very much alive. Sarah blinked at her, disoriented. Gloria? Her voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. You're here. What happened? Tears blurred Gloria's vision as she rushed forward, pulling her sister into a fierce hug. Oh, Sarah, you're home. Sarah shuddered against her. I saw him. Roderick. He was a monster, Gloria, twisted by rage. He was searching for Colette, furious that she had betrayed him, that she had moved on, married someone else. Gloria cupped Sarah's face, her thumbs brushing against her cheeks, wiping the tears. You're safe now. It's over. Sarah's gaze flickered toward the attic door. Her voice was quieter now, wary. Is it? Gloria took a slow breath. I think he finally found peace. After all these years, he was released from his pain. Sarah nodded, but unease lingered in her expression. Then let's make sure no one ever opens that diary again, Gloria agreed. And without hesitation, they climbed back up to the attic, grabbing the diary. Then, under the moon's watchful glow, they carried it out back, straight to the fire pit. As the flames consumed the aged leather and time-worn pages, an unnatural wind howled through the trees, carrying with it the last echoes of Roderick Shadowthorn of Moonvale Hollow. And for the first time in 70 years, Moonvale Hollow would be forgotten forever, or so they hoped. Broken statements. I've said too much. It's time for you to go. Detective Foster sneaked a weary glance at her partner, Detective Daniels, before casting a stern expression to the woman they questioned. "You haven't said much at all," the detective countered. The living room grew warmer by the minute as the blazing sun rose higher into the sky. It had to be noon by now, and their small town was in the middle of a heat wave. Crime was in short supply, thankfully, and these days, most of the calls they received were from the elderly asking for help to set up their air conditioners. This woman did not have any cool air circulating her home. Her windows were open, letting the stiff, warm air sit like an unwelcome guest. The woman crossed her arms, twisting her head abruptly away from the officers. "I can't say much more than I already told you. You're asking too many questions." Foster snapped her notepad shut, fighting the urge to roll her eyes. She turned her back on them to roam the living space. As she walked further away, she heard Daniels scoff. "We're asking questions to help you, and I've already told you my answers to those questions." "Barely," the woman gasped. "I don't like your attitude." Foster made her way into the kitchen as the bickering voices died down in the distance. Not that it was a large house, but she was more focused on looking around while the homeowner was distracted. Normally, she didn't condone her partner arguing with the victim, but sometimes it came in handy as a nice diversion. Earlier that day, the department had received a call from the neighbor claiming she heard breaking glass and then shouting. While on the phone, she noted the shouting had died down and all was quiet. Still, the woman's nerves were shaken and begged for someone to come over and check it out. First, the detectives visited the neighbor, but they didn't get any new information out of her. She was too afraid to even open the door for the officers. She had spoken to them through a crack in a window, motioning to the house next door. Foster made her way to the house first, while Daniels stayed behind to calm the poor lady down some. Foster had to knock on the door twice before the homeowner finally answered. Her name was Marianne Jules, and Foster guessed her to be in her mid to late 40s. She wore silk blouses, black dress pants, and was almost always in 3-inch heels when out around town. A string of pearls dressed her skinny neck that she always fiddled with. There was no wedding band on her finger, and as far as Foster was concerned, the woman didn't have any close family, nor did she know anyone in town before arriving. She lived alone and had recently moved here within the past 6 months. Marianne didn't make much of an effort to get to know the townspeople, and not everyone was eager to welcome her, Foster included. She remained polite, of course, but she was skeptical of visitors, especially visitors who stayed. Foster grew up in Willow's Landing, and over time, she realized one thing everyone here had in common. Every individual who made up the population here was born and raised in this small town. Sure, the occasional tourist came through, but no one ever moved to Willow's Landing, nor did anyone born here ever move out. When Marianne had finally answered the door, she was less than pleasant to see an officer standing on her front porch. She remained standoffish, but gave the detectives enough information for them to figure out the glass shattering the neighbor had heard was a window breaking. Marianne admitted someone broke into her house, which was enough for them to enter the premises, but they couldn't get any more information out of her. Marianne acted scared, but beat around the bush when asked why she didn't call the authorities herself. First, she thought it was her imagination. Then, she changed her tune and claimed she wanted to check it out herself. Apparently, she has a cat hiding around the house somewhere, and suggested that maybe the feline had knocked over a vase. According to Marianne, it took her a while to discover the window because a 2-story condo is a lot of square footage to cover. It was tough for both detectives to remain impartial as they questioned her, but that was all they needed, for her to admit a window broke. How did the window break? Daniels had asked. Which window was it? Mind if we check it out? Foster had questioned. That was when Marianne stopped playing with the pearls on her neck and pressed the back of her hand to her forehead as though she were ready to faint. Claiming she had said too much, Foster sauntered through the kitchen, taking in the surroundings. It was pristine, almost as if Marianne had never used it before. Yet, a knife was missing from the butcher block on the counter by the sink. The dishwasher was open a crack, so maybe Marianne did cook and was simply a neat freak. Regardless, the detective made a mental note of the missing knife. Too obvious? Maybe, but Foster didn't have a good feeling about this woman. The window above the sink was still in one piece, which was the main reason Foster looked around the place, determined to find this broken window. She rounded the island in the middle of the room and exited through the back. It led to a hallway. To her left was a bedroom, and in front of her was a bathroom. The detective peered into both rooms, but the windows were still intact. She made her way down the hall, the voices of her partner and Marianne growing louder. They still argued, as Daniels tried to get more information out of the supposed victim. But Marianne had none of it. She kept scoffing in response, without using her words. Marianne acted like a child, and, as Foster re-entered the living room, she could see the impatience and swelling frustration written all over her partner's face. She was on the other side of the living room now, behind Marianne, who didn't seem to notice the detective's return. Or maybe she didn't notice the absence beforehand. In no attempt to relieve her partner, Foster locked eyes with her him. She gave a curt nod while pointing up. Daniels didn't answer, but turned his attention back to Marianne instead. Foster walked up the stairs to see what she could find on the second floor. At the top of the landing, Foster faced the second bathroom. It was clean, the window unbroken. To the right was another room that looked to be an office or study area. Like the rest of the house, it looked untouched. The window was open, but not broken. A tuxedo cat sunbathed on the windowsill. So the cat was real, after all. Foster turned around, the stairs to her left now. She could hear her partner spouting off something to Marianne, but she couldn't make out the words. It was only a matter of time before Marianne kicked them out, so Foster had to act fast. There was one room left in the house, straight down the hall. If there was no broken window in there, she didn't know what they were doing here. Quickening her pace, the detective poked her head into the room at the end of the hall, which looked like the primary bedroom, judging by the queen-sized bed. Bingo! The window above the vanity was shattered to bits. Foster stepped into the room, noticing a messy trail of glass from the window to the other side of the room. Halfway through the trail, the glass on the floor mixed with red spots on the beige carpet. The detective stepped to the left, following the trail, before huffing out an exasperated sigh. On the other side of the bed, invisible from the doorway, lay the body of a man. Instinctively, Foster crouched beside the body, pressing her fingers against his neck. No pulse. She figured as much. She studied the body briefly. The deceased lay on his stomach, arms laying above his head, as though he had tried to break his fall. His legs stretched out behind him, as though he fell to his knees first. Foster grunted as she recognized the kitchen's missing knife from the butcher block sticking out of his back. From the cuts in his shirt, it looked like he had been stabbed at least twice, and clearly didn't see his attacker coming. A pool of blood, still damp, surrounded the body. He likely bled out rather than the stab killing him. Foster stood, staring down at the body. Marianne didn't live with anyone, and with the window shattered, this man must have been the culprit. It was easy to assume Marianne defended herself and stopped the intruder before stealing anything, though she couldn't yet speak those accusations aloud, as it was all speculation. Foster looked forward, noticing a pair of doors. Whatever he was after must have been inside the bedroom closet, unless he heard Marianne coming up the stairs and tried to hide. Without being able to make out the words, Foster heard Marianne's voice raise. It seemed time was up. Before heading back downstairs, the detective made a quick call for backup and forensics. The house was now a crime scene, and the detectives would gladly leave the home for now. But little did Marianne know she was going with them. Foster sauntered down the stairs as she wrote notes in her notepad. About halfway down, she heard Marianne's sharp tone. "What were you doing upstairs? Who gave you permission to go upstairs?" "You did," Foster replied. "We came over to check out a possible break-in, and you let us inside. I checked things out, and, yep, you've got a broken window." Marianne swallowed a lump in her throat. She stomped over to the front door, opening it wide. "Out. After you," Foster responded. She walked over to the door, motioning for Marianne to lead the way with a smile. "The house is a crime scene now, so we'll need to vacate the premises until forensics gets here. A squeak escaped Marianne's lips, but she didn't move. Foster held out a hand. Shall we walk out together? Marianne glared at the officer, clutching her pearls. I can walk myself. Thank you very much. She snubbed the detective by throwing her nose in the air as she strutted onto the porch and down the front steps, as though it was her idea to exit. Daniels leaned closer to his partner as the two stepped outside, closing the front door. I'm confused. The broken window was in the master bedroom, along with the body of a man with a knife sticking out of his back. When walking through the kitchen, I noticed the butcher block missed a knife. Foster explained in hushed tones. Daniels exhaled, putting his hands on his hips. A homicide? We haven't seen one of those in, what, a decade? Something like that. And to think one of our residents was a trespasser. Who died? Foster watched Marianne, who paced her front yard, one hand fiddling with her pearls, and the other by her mouth as she bit her fingernails. Subtle. That's the concerning bit, she answered. More concerning than our newest resident possibly being a murderer? I didn't recognize the body. Daniels let his arms fall against his sides. That's not possible. We keep track of who enters town, even tourists. No one's entered Willow's Landing since Marianne arrived 6 months ago. Foster shrugged her shoulders. I said it was concerning. Daniels threw his head back, groaning. So, we have a new resident who keeps to herself, and a stranger new to town who breaks into her house and she murders him in return. Technically, we can't say she was the one who murdered him. It's definitely likely, of course, but we need to do some investigating first. It's still enough to hold her for questioning. Daniels smirked. Foster chuckled. This is true. She can't run away or avoid our questions anymore now, can she? They heard sirens in the distance, getting louder as backup arrived. The detectives noticed Marianne freeze in her tracks, looking off into the distance. Before she could make a break for it, the partners sandwiched her. Are you aware there's a dead body in your bedroom? Foster questioned. Marianne gasped. Excuse me? So, you didn't see anyone in your room? Daniels added. Marianne twisted her head to face him. She glared at him. Of course not. Are you aware the broken window was in the main bedroom? Foster continued. Marianne turned her head back around to face her. Well, yeah. I went to check it out, remember? I thought the cat broke something. You saw the window, but didn't see the body? Daniels pressed. Marianne breathed heavily, looking back and forth between the two. Finally, she threw her hands up, narrowing her eyes at the ground. I don't know what you think you're trying to do, but it won't work on me. A couple police cruisers pulled up to the house. Neighbors started peering out from behind their curtains, some sitting on their front porches. One man, not even trying to be subtle, started dusting his swing porch while making heavy eye contact with the police arriving. Are you aware there's a knife missing from your kitchen? Foster proceeded anyway. Marianne stomped her foot, covered ears, and squeezed her eyes shut. The detectives rolled their eyes at one another. Daniels took this as an opportunity to step away to get the rest of the team up to speed. I refuse to be interrogated like this. You came by without my calling you for help. You searched my house without a warrant. Now you're treating me like some sort of criminal. Foster folded her arms, shrugging nonchalantly. Fine. Forget the body. The fact remains that someone broke into your house, and now they're dead. Were you expecting anyone today? Marianne relaxed her shoulders, staring quizzically at the detective. No. Was someone staying with you at your house? No. Have you spoken to anyone recently about something special you keep in your house? Do you know why anyone would want to break in? Marianne shrugged, shaking her head. She played with her necklace again, deep in thought. No, I've never even seen him before. Foster sighed, pulling out her handcuffs. What are you doing? Marianne took a step back in horror. Seen who? Foster pressed, holding on to the cuffs. Marianne hesitated, but pointed to her house. With a condescending attitude, she said, "The supposed body you claim to be in my house?" Matching her tone, Foster replied, "We never said the body was a man." Marianne froze, pressing her lips together. "Put your hands behind your back," Foster said. Marianne did as she was told, too shocked to disobey. She listened as Foster read her rights, too stunned to speak. As soon as Foster completed the speech, Marianne opened her mouth to protest. But the detective stopped her as she led her to a squad car. "Don't speak," she ordered. "You've said too much already. Dear Death. Dear Death. Hello, old friend. I would be amiss if I called you a stranger now, as the frequency of your visits in my life have made us more than acquaintances. It has been years since our first run-in together. When I met you, I didn't understand you were a being within yourself, a standalone, vital force that I didn't recognize for what you really stood for. Your introduction to me preceded the death of my grandpa on September 24th, 1998. The mighty being that he was, the biggest form of life I knew, was ripped from me, and you were the thief that came in and stole him. He lived a long life, I was told, satisfied, and a job well done. But as I heard these things, none of them gave me comfort. Silently, I began to develop distrust. You made me weary of so many things, of bonds formed with those around me, of meaningful, lasting love that would carry me through hardships, and of you, death itself, and that you could take from me in an instant what life had freely given me to experience. I was only 13 years old, but I knew you were someone I needed to always watch out for. That you would be there even while I smiled and enjoyed life, and the moments it actually made me smile. I thought we wouldn't meet again for years to come, I thought I had given enough of my heart to you when I was a child to buy my way through years of togetherness with those that I loved. I thought my heartache was payment enough. But you had other plans. September 6th, 2020. The eldest of my grandfather's children, his only baby girl, was taken. You started with a queen. I must tell you, and her death hit me hard. My auntie was the most thoughtful, caring, most, even if I don't have my life together, I'm going to look out for you, most amazing woman I have ever known. She was loud, boisterous, fun-loving, but would teach you a well-needed lesson. She was the oldest of all boys, so she was tough. Yet, even she was no match for you and your exploits. You took her from us and never looked back. June 27th, 2021. I learned my first lesson on how unfair you could be. My 12-year-old cousin was snatched away so fast by you. None of us seen it coming. For the first time in my life, I saw a mother so broken by her grief, she could barely speak. A father so lost without his son, he could barely stand before the casket that held him and say goodbye. But most of all, your grim visit showed me that no matter how much I loved my children, or tried to protect them from the harsh realities of the life, when it really mattered, my love couldn't save them from you. No amount of protecting them in the world would keep them from your grasp when you decided to whisk through my life and take them or someone else I love. November 1st, 2022. You sought me out in the worst of ways. You knew all too well my fears and panic over the remote possibility of me losing one of my children. Knew all too well that it would destroy me. Opening the door to my daughter's room that day, I walked into my nightmare, made my reality. Death, you take many a soul, every night, always there to absorb the essence of those we lose. So I know you heard my whispered words in the night. I know you knew, down to the fiber of your being, my worst fear. I know you knew my truth as deep and as well as I did. So when realized, you took my daughter, another bright light that those around me, who have nothing else to offer as comfort, will say was a life gone too soon. It solidified my ill thoughts of you, that you didn't play fair, that you took every opportunity to fight dirty. My daughter, one piece of my tattered heart that I managed to birth and have walk around personified, flesh and blood. You take her, and not me. You felt, as you always do, that it was time, that she had done all she was here to do, and that again, it was a job well done, and she no longer had to face a world where depression and sadness touched her. The traumas she experienced and always took her mind to a place where I couldn't reach her, would never again have her lost. Here, I have to be honest with you, Death. As much as I hate to even say your name, I am overjoyed that the ugliness of life can never reach her again. But I needed more time. 15 years will never be enough. I look for her in the moon, as I know you walked her toward it. However, I will forever say, you're unfair. She was my glue. That kid that kept us all together. She was just finding her smile. Her real smile. Just finding a reason, beyond me as she told me, to live her life to the fullest. You took her little sister's person, and the one she talked to all the time, her brother's game partner, whom he discovered new levels on Soul Calibur with, her big sister's binge show watcher, and how they could watch whole seasons together in one night, her father's favorite, and how he doted on her mama number two's confidant, and how she helped her realize it was okay to love herself. You took my partner in crime, my me and you against it all, if you will, the one who would make me smile even when the world sought out my tears. Shame on you. In losing her, I lost myself, and I have no one else to blame but you. How dare you take my child from me? Have you not taken enough in your time with me? From your time with everyone? From the unexpectant parents who should never have to bury their children, or the children you've orphaned? Has your roster not been filled with mothers and fathers, beloved aunts or favorite uncles? My daughter's name was too pure to be added to your list, and as the world moved on, going back to the daily hustle and bustle, I'm here stuck in the moment. You ripped my sanity to shreds, and in the far reaches of my mind, I can hear the echoes of your laughter. And I know you feel pleasure in the grief you leave in your wake. That is when all the "I'm here if you need me's" or the "call me anytimes" slow down, and the quiet nights last longer than you ever imagined they could last. I always come back to you. I think about how you have visited me so many times just to destroy my peace and disrupt my every day. The day you took my daughter, you took a piece of me too, and you have left me forever, grasping at the dark threads of your coattails, trying to hold on to the part of me you are trying to take. My grip constantly slipping, but I can't let go. To let go of you would mean I lose my grasp on her. The only thing that pulled me through was my support system that surrounded me and helped me recover from your violent breeze of a visit. Your homecomings always come with tears and loss. I'm finally coming to realize. August 11th, 2023. You paid me a visit once again, but this time I expected you. The cancer that ravished my uncle's body and had him giving up on life were signs that alerted me. You weren't far behind. Out of the 7 uncles I have, he was my favorite. When I came out and introduced the family to my now wife, he was the one who protected me from judgment and harsh words. Any problem with me had to go through him first, and he accepted me even before my father told me he loved me still. We could talk about anything, and we did. We talked about religion, life, politics, love, relationships, and more. There was never any judgment. My whole life, he loved me for me. Yet again, you decided we had enough of the mighty presence he exuded, and you snuffed his light out after a long, hard-fought battle. The only solace I take in his passing is that he no longer has to go through that pain. And I suppose, deep down, if I'm honest, I should thank you for that. But that's where my thanks for you ends. Death. If you're still with me, I promise I'll tell you why. I had the honor for 39 years to have a man in my life who stood through it all. A man who, no matter what the test that was thrown at him, he found a way to make it work. How he stood tall against adversity. Who made sure he built and had the foundation to bring to any table. A man who showed up whenever called upon. Who had so much wisdom that he imparted, whether you wanted him to or not, and always did it with love. And it was exactly what you needed to hear. I had the pleasure of calling this man my father. When I seen him when he lost his own father, I watched him put his grief to the side to stand tall for his sister and brothers. How I seen him tuck his fear of you, death, and stand in the place you had just removed his father from and lead his family. When I seen this, I seen a mighty, strong man that stood against it all, including you, to make a way for his entire family. Not just his children, but for his brothers, wife, and anyone he came into contact with. He exuded strength in a way that made even you, death, stand still, if only for a while. For as you always do, you creeped and snaked your way in and preyed on most anyone's worst fear, losing the ones they love. You always find a way to strike when our defenses are down and our hearts are at their fullest. My father's strength is what I always leaned on, what I drew from. When I was weak, he poured his strength into me, even if he didn't know it. Whenever I called for him, he showed up, no questions asked. It was this example he set for me that allows me to show up for my children in the same way. When I needed my father, he was more to me than anyone could ever be. Yet the smile that man brought to my face shined too bright for you to know that he was one of the main reasons I survived. You selfishly taking my daughter from me. To know he poured so much life into me, even though you had tried your hardest to break me. To know that I no longer have that strength to call upon has broken me in a way I never knew a person could break. I see you relish in the pain you cause as you unfairly take the children of strangers, mothers who have lost their young ones, just like me. You make me know them in a way I never would understand, unless I too, like them, have you as a friend. We know you're toxic, but we're stuck with you, attached for the rest of our lives. I never wanted to know them, or you like this. The next year, I began to unbend myself, for what had been meant to destroy me didn't, although it definitely bent me almost to my breaking point. I became complacent and comfortable, taking for granted phone calls and visits with those I held dear, thinking I had those moments in abundance. I became forgetful of the power and pain you wielded so freely and without favorites, because I hadn't seen you for over 365 days. I relaxed enough to think, I can finally breathe. It hurts, and it's labored, and feel like needles poke me with every intake, but I can take a breath, and it feels like I never have before. 2024 for me was a year of realization, reckoning, redirection, and remembrance. And I must admit, the embedded hate I constantly feel for you, the fear of you that I always have on the back burner of my mind, took a back seat to my goals and achievements, and my planning to make things better for me and my family, and do them to honor my daughter's memory. It was a time for promises made and kept, to do better for her than I had been doing in the time since she'd been gone. For I had lost myself for a long time because of your thievery. When I lost her, I lost a large part of who I was, and I spent months on an alcoholic whirlwind. It was my father who finally broke through my hazy merry-go-round with his love and understanding and words of wisdom and support. I'm 39, and I still have yet to make a single decision without him. His opinion has always held a heavy weight in what I decide to do, no matter how big or small the decision. To you, however, my decisions are irrelevant and null in void. For you decided, once again, that I'd had enough. And when you decide things, your decisions come with such finality. I'm starting to understand that you see our fears and they empower you. You made me realize, in real time, one of my worst fears. And yet, not even a full 3 years from the date I lost my baby, and you took the air form my lungs you're still searching the inner reaches of my being for more, saying gleefully to yourself, who else is she scared of losing that I can take and watch how she crumbles? On January 27th, 2025, my pillar of strength, my Papichu, my Superman, breathed his last breath. He kissed my mother on her cheek, told her he loved her, waited until he was alone with you, and followed you onto the abyss. How can he be gone? He's Superman. I assume you were his kryptonite. He knew he was close and felt you hovering, but he knew all too well our fear of losing someone else, and that fear of you hurting us again kept him quiet. You stole his voice, and he couldn't let us know his true pain. Although I didn't think I would see you again for years to come, when I felt you this time around, you were like a fragrance in the air that I recognized instantly. I hate that you are so familiar to me. You took my daddy. How could you? When I got the call carrying the worst news I could hear, I knew it was because of you, before a word was spoken. You, death, have left me truly on my own in this world, with this constant, pulsing, alive, reverberating fear of your next coming, and who you will take this time. I don't even know if I fear you anymore. More so, I now expect you to unexpectedly, without any preparation on my part, will float through my life and etch notches in me as if I were a wall measuring the continued growth of a child. You have shattered my already broken heart into a million pieces, and all I can manage is this plea, death. I plead with you. Let us once again become strangers. Let us become so distant. The thought of remembrance between us is alien. I want to know you no more. Flee from me and touch not any more of those I love. I have given enough of my heart as payment for the bonds I've created, and you have severed. Please sail away on the ocean of tears. You have forced me to cry and never return to me. Signed, your well-known, but very reluctant and unwilling friend, Khalees, Veil of Night. I've said too much, Caroline exclaimed. She snatched her rain-soaked black denim jacket from the chair and turned to go. Caroline, wait! Hank caught her hand. Her slender fingers felt chill and damp against his. You can't expect me to believe. No, she murmured. No one would. And that's the point. It was useless even coming here. I don't know why I did. Hank squeezed her limp fingers, giving them a shake. Please, let's start over, he said, motioning for her to sit again. This cult, it's a coven. The Sisterhood of Unhallowed Light. She fidgeted with a lock of damp auburn hair stuck to her pale forehead. Right, the sisterhood. So, a few women who get together and play at witchcraft? There are 12. They wanted me to join, and I thought I wanted that too. But Caroline caught her bottom lip between her teeth. The midnight hue of her black lipstick was a stark contrast to the pallor of her skin. She took a breath, and the words tumbled from her. I feel seen by them, like they really get me. They accept me. They celebrate me, just as I am. And what they offer, the sense of belonging, the knowledge, power. I thought, why shouldn't I? A flash of lightning lit the rain-spattered window, with a crack of thunder following close behind. Caroline's eyes grew large with panic, and she twisted in her seat to look outside. There are things we shouldn't play with, she whimpered. I know that now. I've completed 2 of the 3 initiation rituals with the sisterhood. And you're saying this torrential rain we've been having these past 3 days is part of that? That's awfully biblical, isn't it? This isn't hurricane season, Hank. He shrugged and twisted his mouth in a half-ways grin. With weather patterns these days, who can tell what season it is anymore? It was me. It was the sisterhood. It's part of the ritual, part of the summoning. Coincidence, that's all. She clutched his arm where the sleeve of his t-shirt ended, digging her cold, clammy fingers into his bicep, and pleaded. You wouldn't say that if you knew what I've done, what I've gone through to make this happen. Caroline, she let go of Hank's arm and fumbled with the top buttons of her black shirt. Yanking one half of it to her left side, she exposed part of her chest. A long vertical slash was bisected by a shorter one, forming an inverted cross over her heart. The 2 slashes stood out as angry purplish-red marks on her otherwise smooth, pale flesh, and were knitted together with black stitches. They made me promise my heart to Valthus, the formless entity of writhing darkness whom they worship. Hank stared for a moment, then sputtered. Valthus? Your heart? Come on, Caroline. What? Am I supposed to believe they've cut out your heart? Isn't it usually the soul these sort of fanatics are after? Caroline grasped Hank's fingers in her trembling hand and placed his palm over the wound on her chest. Her skin was unnaturally cool. He held his hand there for a moment, then brought his fingers up to her throat, feeling for a pulse. Another clap of thunder startled them both. Hank pulled his hand from Caroline's neck. He stared at her in disbelief, saying, "This is some kind of joke, a prank. It's not real. How could you be here telling me all this if they've taken out your heart?" "I don't know," she sobbed. "But I think I've made an awful mistake. You've got to help me. Promise you won't let them take me." "No, of course not. Where would they take you anyway? A hospital? It's an abandoned old church, Blackthorn Chapel. They want to take me there for the final ritual," Caroline said. To complete the summoning of Valthis, they need to make an offering of the heart. But aren't you supposed to be joining them? Becoming one of their coven? This sounds more like a sacrifice. Yes, it does. They told me it was my initiation. But Caroline trailed off, turning to stare at the rain beating against the window. In a low whisper, she continued, "Now I'm not so sure. That's why I'm frightened." The blinding flash of light lit up the nearby window, and a deafening roar of thunder shook the house. A loud crash followed. Nearby, a car horn began sounding, repeating its alarm annoyingly. Hank leapt to his feet and crossed the room to look outside. Christ, that was close. The tree next door has split nearly in two. Some of its limbs have fallen over a few cars on the street. The lights inside the house flickered. Once, twice, and a third time before plunging them into darkness. "I'll get some candles," Hank said, cursing as he caught his toe on some piece of furniture. He fumbled his way to the kitchen. "Just need to find my phone so I can light the way." One more thunderclap boomed overhead. A sudden blast of wind swirled through the house. Footsteps pounded across the floor. Caroline shrieked, and there were sounds of a struggle from the other room. "No!" Caroline cried out. "I won't go! Hank, don't let them take me." Hank stumbled from the kitchen and could see down the hallway to the front door. It was swung wide open, and the wind and rain swept through in howling gusts. "Caroline?" Hank called out. He heard glass shattering all around him. The back of his head felt like an explosion had gone off, and the world tilted and shifted into slow motion. Hank sank to his knees. His vision was filled with a combination of swirling stars and inky blackness. The sounds of frantic struggle moved away from him as his hands slapped the carpeted floor. He struggled to breathe and clear his sight as he held himself from pitching forward onto his face. "Caroline!" he shouted. His head throbbed viciously, and he thought he might be sick. From outside, he heard car doors slamming, and a vehicle roared to life. He struggled to his feet and made it to the front door. Through the sheets of rain, he saw the burning glow of red tail lights receding down his street. Pursuit wasn't an easy option. The tree limbs, which had fallen over several cars, were blocking Hank's car as well. He slashed at them with a hatchet he had stowed in his camping gear. The rest of the fallen limbs tore at the side and undercarriage of Hank's car, but he managed to break free. He swore and cursed some more. The lousy cell service the storm had left him with made searching the internet difficult. After several minutes, he found directions to and a description of Blackthorn Chapel on a website promoting ghost walks in the city. Once a place of worship, the old chapel had fallen into disrepair, and the ground beneath was so the locals claimed, cursed. It took nearly an hour to detour around storm debris and reroute past streets that had been rendered impassable before he arrived at his destination. If he'd paid the $50 for the Ghost Walk tour, Blackthorn Chapel would have rated 5 stars. It was surrounded by an overgrown and tangled hedge of blackthorn shrubs, buffeted by the wind and rain. The gnarled limbs seemed to claw at the twilit sky, as though grasping at something unseen. The crumbling stone walls were cracked and weathered. The roof was partially caved in, showing an outline of jagged edges that looked like the jaws of some wild beast snarling or snapping at the heavens. And the heavy wooden doors were worn and splintered and hanging slightly ajar on great rusted iron hinges. The jet-black gloom beyond the entrance seemed more of warning to sensible folk rather than an invitation to step inside. But if there was any chance he might save Caroline, inside was where Hank needed to be. He passed through an opening in the rough hedge, careful not to let the thorns sink their barbs into him. Walking in through the front entrance, he'd decided, would be courting failure. He might as well put his head through a noose. Instead, Hank crept around to the side of the run-down property, searching for another way into the chapel. Lightning lit the horizon several miles off. The brief flash revealed to him that he was creeping through a graveyard, which was part of the chapel grounds. Most of the headstones were crooked, sinking into the ground. Some had fallen or been knocked over. Many lay half-buried in tufted humps of wild grass. With a sense of dread, he picked his way carefully through the tangle of ancient stones and grass until he was out of the graveyard and could lean against the chapel wall. His heart was pounding as he panted silently, trying to catch his breath. Above the howling of the storm, a sound caught his ear. Soft at first, but regular, insistent, and coming from inside the chapel. Hank strained to make out what he was hearing. It was definitely chanting of some sort. Hank edged along the stone wall to the back of the crumbling old building. The ground sloped down, revealing the foundations of the chapel. He spotted a break in the wall and rushed to it. It was a narrow space, but large enough, he felt, to squeeze inside. Before he did so, Hank hefted the hatchet in his hand. He couldn't imagine actually using it to hack away at some unseen coven member. That would be slasher movie extreme. He twisted it in around in his hand so that the square end faced out, becoming his weapon. He sucked in a few deep breaths, questioning his sanity. Then he scraped and squeezed his way through the narrow space. Feeling his way around in the dark, Hank discovered a series of long wooden boxes. Great, he thought. Could this night get any spookier? He'd found his way into the crypt. It took him a few minutes to pick his way around. But he eventually found a set of stairs leading to the proper part of the chapel. This was one of the cloisters, or side chapels. The chanting was more distinct. He could make out the words, "Valthis, Valthis, veil of night, drown the stars, consume the light from the maw, where silence dies, open now your 1,000 eyes." He edged carefully toward a gap in the wall, which entered into the chapel's nave. There were broken pews scattered throughout the space, casting long shadows from the candles, which lit up the altar at the front. Shadow deep and shadow wide, stretch the fold, let worlds collide. What was whole? Let it decca, let the void now have its way. He saw Carolyn, bound and gagged. She was wide-eyed and frantic, struggling to break free of her bonds. Unseen horror, whispered breath, we call you forth. We offer death, one by one, we fade. We kneel, take our names, unmake us real. A quick count revealed only 8 figures in hooded robes surrounding Caroline. He thought she'd said they were 12 in number. But this would be better odds. Hank hefted the hatchet in his hand one more time, feeling as confident as a person could ever be faced with such a scene. He took one step forward, but that was as far as he got. He was grasped from behind, his arms, legs, and even his torso in the grip of unseen talon-like hands. With swift force, they pulled him backwards, throwing him off balance. A ragged cloth was pressed over his nose and mouth. He struggled and tried to scream. Then blackness engulfed him. When he came to, Hank found he was now stretched out over the altar. His hands and feet were bound. Looking up, he could see eerie shadows playing across the vaulted arch above. "I'm sorry, Hank," Caroline said. "I had to do it." He snapped his head around in the direction of her voice and saw she was standing to his left. She held a long, curved dagger in her hands. The other coven members, all 12 of them now, were surrounding him. We needed a heart to complete my initiation and call down Valthis." He thought he'd known fear earlier in his pursuit of Caroline's attackers. Now, a choking sensation that felt like ice was spreading through his chest. In his head, Hank shouted Caroline's name, but the gag in his mouth prevented him from getting that or any other words that followed out. The coven members began to chant once more, "Valthis, Valthis, veil of night, drown the stars, consume the light, in the name of the park." They say you never really know what someone is like. Not truly. Life has a funny way of showing you. Coincidences, they call them. Those little twists of fate that seem too good to be true. Like how, just as the park started filling up with the wrong kinds of people, they all began to disappear, one by one. Strange, isn't it? I've lived here for decades, in this little house with its flower boxes and its white shutters. watching the seasons change, watching the people come and go at the park across the street. For so long, the park was perfect. Flowers bloomed each spring, and the trees provided shade for the frolicking that took place under them. The good people were always there, the ones who respected it. There was Mrs. Calloway, who had walked her poodle, Franz, at the same time every morning for 20 years. There was George, the retired schoolteacher, who read his newspaper on the same bench while sipping his thermos of coffee. The mothers with their strollers, the elderly couples arm in arm, the joggers who nodded politely as they passed. These were my people. But then the bad ones came. First, it was the teenagers, those little delinquents with their cigarettes and their loud music, loitering around the swings, leaving their garbage behind. They carved their nonsense into the benches, foul words that I won't repeat, marking their territory like stray dogs. I scolded them at first, wagging my finger, telling them they should be ashamed. They only laughed. They had no respect for anything. Not for me, not for the park, not for the memories of the good people who had been there before them. But they weren't laughing for long. Then came the couple, the awful couple, who would play disc golf and argue the entire time. He was a burly man with a voice like a fehorn, and she was a waifish thing, shrill and unrelenting like a bird. They didn't just argue, they screamed, and I even think they smoked marijuana. I would try to enjoy my walks, but their voices would pierce through the trees, ruining everything. Clem, Ollie, and Marcus, my Yorkies, would cower in fear as they approached us. It was always about money, or about some other woman, or about how she was ungrateful. And he was a brute. She used much more colorful language. The sound of their discs clattering against metal mixed with their venomous words, polluting the air. Their presence felt like a stain on what should have been a sanctuary, a place of peace. I could almost hear the park groaning under their weight. And then there were the worst ones of all, the dealers. I noticed them sneaking into the park, lurking by the back benches where the trees grew thickest. They wore hoodies, their eyes darting around as they exchanged small bags for crumpled bills. I knew exactly what was happening. I'd seen enough crime reports to recognize the signs, and to think they were doing this when there were children and teenagers in the vicinity. The neighborhood wasn't safe anymore. My park wasn't safe. I saw them whispering to people who passed by, shifting anxiously, always watching their backs. I knew their kind. I had seen the stories on the news. Violence always followed them, and the police did nothing, and yet people ignored it. They walked past, either too afraid or too indifferent to say anything. I called our local police station, and they only told me they would send an officer to check it out. I will tell you, this did not happen. As I watched from my window and saw no police officers in the area, I did report this as well. But I knew the truth. If you want something done right, you must do it yourself. I had to do something. You can never judge a book by its cover, they say. People look at me, and they see an old woman, slightly hunched, dressed in my sensible sweaters and shoes, walking my 3 little dogs. They see my tidy house with the white shutters and the flower boxes, and they assume I am exactly what I appear to be. They don't see the woman who was married to a cruel man for 20 years, who learned how to endure, how to be patient, how to bide her time until the right moment came, who realized sometimes something must be lost to be gained, as was the case in preserving peace for my 3 sons. They don't see the woman who grew up on a farm, who learned early how to break a chicken's neck in one swift motion. They don't know how strong my hands really are. Desperate times call for desperate measures, don't they? The teenagers were first. It wasn't hard. One of them, a particularly mouthy one with a sneer that made my blood boil, was walking home alone one night. It was almost too easy. A single strike with the tire iron I kept in my shed, and he crumpled like a rag doll. He and his friends did not hang out at the park after that, so far as I could tell. It was strange how quickly the others took the hint. The arguing couple was next. I followed them, listening to their voices rise in fury. They were on the edge of the park, past the old fence, where no one went anymore. She was crying, and he was yelling, his voice shaking the leaves. I didn't even hesitate. A push was all it took, just one push, and his big, lumbering body toppled over the edge of the ravine. The silence was so sudden, it was almost beautiful. It was as if the park could finally exhale. She turned to me, eyes wide, lips trembling. I thought she would scream, but she didn't. She ran. And I let her, because I knew she wouldn't tell. Women like her know better than to cross women like me. And maybe she will use this second chance to make some better life choices. The dealers were harder. They moved in groups, cautious, always looking over their shoulders. But people like them, they get greedy. They trust the wrong people. One by one, they fell. Each disappearance, a small victory. The police didn't even look into it too hard. Junkies, they called them. No big loss. I made sure they disappeared quietly. A little patience, a little careful planning. No one questioned it. You wouldn't suspect I could even be capable of these deeds. The park is quiet now. The good people have returned, along with the lilac blooms and the koi fish in the pond. Mrs. Calloway walks Franz without fear. George reads his paper in peace. The mothers push their strollers without looking over their shoulders. Their babies have grown and play freely on the park equipment without having to read rubbish. Soon, a new batch of these little lambs will be springing about. The joggers smile again. It's so nice that the park has cleaned up, they say. Feels safe again. Isn't it amazing that all those rough types just stopped coming here? I wonder what happened. Mrs. Calloway mentioned yesterday, as we paused to dispose of our dog droppings before exiting the park. I smile back, but then, just as we step onto the sidewalk, I notice something. A new teenager sitting on the swings, head down, hoodie pulled tight, just sitting, watching. I grip the leash in my hands, my knuckles whitening, because it is safe, and I intend to keep it that way. Echoes in the dark. Michelle Byers woke to the hum of the oxygen machine and the sterile white glow of hospital lights. She had survived the crash. Her husband, Daniel, had not. They told her she had been unconscious for days, and in those days, the world had stolen her sense of normalcy. Recovery was grueling. Her body ached, but her mind suffered more. The doctors diagnosed her with narcolepsy, an after effect of the trauma. She struggled to distinguish wakefulness from the strange visions that plagued her. But nothing prepared her for what came next. Chapter 1. Fractured Pieces. The house felt empty without Daniel. Michelle moved through the rooms like a ghost herself, touching the furniture, the framed photographs, the tiny details of a life that had once been whole. Every object felt sacred, preserved in time, but also hollow without him. Then the strange things began happening. The first time, she thought she was imagining it. She walked into the kitchen one morning to find Daniel's favorite coffee mug on the counter. It wasn't just there. It was filled exactly as he would have made it. 3 sugars, 2 splashes of cream. She froze. Her breath came in quick, shallow bursts. She reached out with a trembling hand and touched the ceramic. It was warm. Did I do this? She whispered to herself. She had no recollection of making the coffee. She dumped it in the sink, trying to push away the nagging thought clawing at the back of her mind. That night, she checked Daniel's drawer, the one where she had placed his watch, his wedding ring, his last belongings. The watch was gone. She searched frantically. Through the drawers, through the entire bedroom, the nightstand, the closet. Nothing. Lack of sleep, she muttered. That's all this is. But then the voicemails started. Chapter 2. Echoes of the Past. One evening, as she walked into the living room, the red light on the answering machine blinked. It was an old relic, something Daniel had insisted on keeping despite her protests about just using their cell phones. She pressed play. "Hey, love," Just letting you know I'll be home late. Don't wait up." Her breath hitched. His voice, crisp and casual, like it always had been. Like he wasn't dead. Her legs buckled, and she collapsed onto the couch, pressing her hands to her mouth. She checked the timestamp. The message had been left yesterday. She deleted it. An error it had to be, but it happened again and again, every few nights. The same message, with slightly different wording. Sometimes it was just a simple, "Love you. See you soon." She played one for her friend, Angela. Angela's face paled. "This is some sick joke. I swear, I'm not making this up." Angela reached for her hand. "Michelle, this isn't healthy. Maybe it's your condition. Your doctor said hallucinations are possible with narcolepsy." Michelle recoiled. "You think I'm imagining this?" Angela hesitated. "I think grief can do strange things. And you haven't been sleeping." Michelle didn't argue. What was there to say? She made an appointment with her doctor, who prescribed sleeping pills to help regulate her sleep cycles. Chapter 3. The Stranger in the Coffee Shop. For weeks, the house was quiet. No misplaced objects, no strange messages. It was almost as if, by sleeping more, she had sealed whatever crack had let the past bleed into the present. Then she saw him. She was at a small cafe downtown, sipping on chamomile tea, staring blankly at her phone. It was an overcast afternoon, a steady drizzle coating the streets outside in shimmering gray. The bell over the door jingled, and a figure stepped inside. Her breath stopped in her throat. Daniel, sitting at a table near the window, laughing, his eyes crinkling in that way they always had. A woman sat across from him, stirring her coffee. Michelle's heart pounded as she stood, nearly knocking over her cup. She stumbled toward the door, her vision tunneling. Outside, the streets were a mess of honking cars, sloshing tires, and blurred figures. She tried to cross, barely noticing the screech of brakes and a driver shouting at her as she nearly stepped in front of a cab. By the time she made it to the other side, Daniel was gone. She pressed her hands to the cafe window, her breath fogging up the glass. No, 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 no. Her hands shook as she pulled out her phone and called Angela. "He's alive," she gasped. "Angela, I swear to God, I just saw him." Angela's voice was strained. "Michelle, that's impossible. I saw him," she screamed, drawing the attention of pedestrians. She turned, scanning the street wildly. No sign of him. Chapter 4. The Cracks in Reality. When she got home, the silence of the house felt like it was pressing down on her. She sat on the couch, her hands gripping her knees. Had she really seen Daniel? Was she losing her grip on reality? As exhaustion pulled at her, she drifted into a restless sleep. And then a sound, footsteps, familiar, slow. Moving toward the bedroom, her heart pounded as she forced herself up. The house was dark, the air thick with something unspoken. She crept toward the bedroom, every step feeling heavier than the last. She pushed open the door. Nothing. Her breath came in ragged gobs. She turned on the light. The room was empty. Just her mind playing tricks again. She sat on the bed, tears burning her eyes. What's happening to me? Then her phone rang. She snatched it up, hands shaking. Mom? Honey? Her mother's voice was soft. I just wanted to check on you. I'm not okay, Michelle whispered. Mom, I saw him. I saw Daniel. Her mother hesitated. Michelle, you know we talked about this before. You and Daniel discussed his wishes in case something happened. You don't remember? A cold wave washed over her. No, we never had that conversation. Her mother sighed. And what about your trip to the lake house last summer? The one he planned? The words stuck in her throat. That never happened. Did it? Then she noticed something else. Her hands, they were different. The faint scar from childhood, gone. The calluses from her years of playing piano, missing. Her reflection in the bedroom mirror flickered for a second. An almost imperceptible glitch, as though the pixels themselves struggled to keep her image in place. Then the bedroom door creaked open. Footsteps, familiar, a shadow in the doorway. Michelle, the voice whispered. Her pulse stilled. Her breath caught in her throat. She turned and saw herself standing there, watching. The world cracked apart. Darkness swallowed her whole. When Michelle awoke, the room looked the same, but wrong. The pictures on the wall were slightly different. Her wedding photo with Daniel now showed them standing in front of a place they had never been. The color of the curtains had changed. Her phone no longer recognized her face. She stumbled to the bathroom, flicked on the light, and gasped. The reflection stared back with blank eyes. Her face, similar, yet unfamiliar. Sharper jaw, eyes a shade too light, skin too smooth. The scar on her collarbone from the skiing accident years ago was gone. A mechanical voice echoed faintly from her phone behind her. System error, biometric mismatch. Please verify user identity. She backed away from the mirror, from the glass that shimmered like liquid for half a second, as if the world was re-rendering itself in real time. She opened drawers, desperate for something familiar, something hers. But the clothes weren't hers. The books on her shelf bore her name as the author, only she'd never written them. The covers depicted surreal scenes, cities made of bone, people with stitched smiles, hollow-eyed children staring up at crimson moons. She ran outside. The street was there, but so quiet. The sky above was bruised purple, the clouds tinged with red. No birds, no wind. Every person she passed moved too slowly, their limbs jerky, robotic. They didn't blink, didn't speak, didn't see her, Michelle walked in a daze, her breath fogging in the warm air. The newsstand still had papers, but the headlines made her stomach twist. Temporal leak worsens. Memory replacements imminent. Global consciousness sync delayed. Users report phantom lives. Version control glitch detected. Subject 487. M. Byers. Flagged for recalibration. Subject? She turned to flee, but froze when she saw the cafe. The same cafe where she'd seen Daniel weeks ago. And there he was again, laughing, alive. Wrong. Sitting across from someone with her face. The other, Michelle, turned, and their eyes met. The world paused. A buzzing started low in her ears, rising to a high-pitched shriek. The people froze mid-step. The air shimmered. The other Michelle stood slowly and began to walk toward her. Michelle backed up, stumbling into a metal pole. A nearby screen flickered to life, displaying the symbol of an eye with fractals radiating outward. Then, a voice spoke from nowhere and everywhere. Welcome, Subject 487. Consciousness sync complete. Version displacement detected. Initiating purge. Michelle screamed, but there was no sound. Only light. And then oblivion. Epilogue. Static. In a bright white room with no doors, Michelle sits at a desk. Her hands type furiously on a keyboard that glows with symbols she doesn't recognize. On the wall, a screen shows surveillance feeds. Dozens of herselves navigating fractured realities. Some crying, some lost, some laughing beside Daniel. A door finally opens behind her. A figure enters. It's her again. This time, dressed in clinical white, clipboard in hand. Her eyes are cold, unblinking. Reset failed. Clipboard Michelle says. They always fight it. Desk Michelle whispers. They remember too much. Clipboard. Michelle tilts her head. Try a deeper extraction next time. Desk. Michelle nods, tears streaking down her face. Which one is the real me? The clipboard falls to the floor. No answer. The light flickers. The room glitches. And somewhere, in another version of reality, a woman named Michelle Byers wakes up again to the hum of an oxygen machine and the sterile white glow of hospital lights. Was it all a dream, or was this the dream? She doesn't know anymore, and maybe she never did. I didn't mean to do it. I didn't mean to do it. The words echoed in my mind as I stood there in the dark, my hands shaking, my heart pounding so loudly it drowned out the sound of the storm outside. The wind howled through the trees, and the rain hammered against the windows. It was a night that felt like it was made for horrors. But the real terror, my terror, was already inside. I stared down at his body, lying in a pool of crimson that seemed to stretch out, devouring everything it touched. His once bright eyes filled with laughter and warmth were now dull and empty. His chest was still, the rhythmic rise and fall I had come to know so well, now forever silenced. It wasn't supposed to end like this. We weren't supposed to be here. I never meant for any of it to happen. The night had started out differently. We were celebrating. Well, I thought we were. It had been a long week for both of us. John had been working late at the office, and I'd been buried in a dozen little tasks at home. We barely saw each other, only passing like two ships in the night. So, when he suggested dinner out, I'd jumped at the chance to spend some quality time together. We went to that little Italian restaurant we loved, the one tucked away in the corner of the city, with the flickering candles and soft music. Everything felt just right. The kind of evening that reminded me of why we had fallen in love in the first place. However, as the night wore on, something changed. Something was off. Something I couldn't explain. It started when John leaned in and rested his hand on mine across the table. He smiled, but there was something in his eyes I couldn't figure out. Was it uncertainty? Maybe it was just me. I hadn't been sleeping well at all. We had building tension between us for months. First, it was little things that were simple to overlook, but now they were impossible to ignore. "What's on your mind?" I asked, trying to smile back. John sighed and leaned back in his chair, looking down at his plate for a moment before meeting my gaze again. "It's nothing, really. Just work stuff. You know how it is." I nodded, though I wasn't sure I believed him. I never did. When John didn't want to talk about something, he wouldn't. But then, as we left the restaurant, he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small box. I couldn't help but smile, hoping that maybe he was attempting to rekindle the spark we'd once had. He'd always been good at that, surprising me and keeping the romance alive in his own way. "What's this?" I asked, teasing him as I took the box from his hand. "Just a little something," he said, his voice sounding odd. I opened it, and inside was a ring. But it wasn't a shiny, sparkly diamond ring that you'd expect as a romantic gesture. This ring was old and looked like perhaps it had been passed down through generations. The ring was tarnished, and the stone had a crack in it. "It's beautiful," I said, though I wasn't sure what I meant by that. There was something that didn't sit right in my gut. "Do you like it?" he asked. I nodded, but found it difficult to smile genuinely. I felt chills all over. "Where did you get this?" I asked, trying to sound nonchalant. Something felt wrong. John didn't answer right away. His eyes had shifted, almost like he was hiding something. He looked away before attempting to look at me again. "It's been in the family for years. It's special. I thought you would like it." "Special," I echoed. My fingers traced the ring's surface, and it was cold, even colder than metal typically is. I could feel the tension between us. It wasn't just about the ring. It was deeper than that. Something had been building for a long time. John as acting odd, avoiding my eyes, trembling as he reached for the car keys. But we didn't say anything more on the drive home. It was quiet, other than the rain that had started. Everything was blurred by the water running down the windshield. The wipers were thankfully filling our silence. When we arrived home, we went through our routine of getting ready for bed. John took a long shower while I tried to relax in the living room. But my mind wouldn't shut off. I kept thinking about the ring, about the way it felt in my hands, and John's strange behavior. When John finally came out of the shower, he walked past me without saying a word, heading toward the bedroom. "John, wait," I said, my voice shaking. "Is something going on? Something you're not telling me?" He stood at the bedroom door and turned to me. He stared for a moment, with just a blank expression. Then he sighed and walked toward me. He sat down on the couch next to me. "I've been thinking a lot," he began with a low voice. "About us. About everything." My heart thudded loudly as I waited for him to continue. "I think we're drifting, Sarah," he said, his words immediately taking my breath away. "I just don't know if we can fix this anymore. We've been drifting for months. It felt like the world was tilting." I couldn't breathe. "Drifting?" I whispered. "What do you mean? We're fine. We're busy. We're just busy. That's all. We can fix this and make it work." John shook his head. "I'm not sure anymore. We've both been pretending. We're just not the same people we were when we got married, Sarah. I'm tired. Really tired. I don't think I can keep pretending." I wanted to cry, to scream, but I couldn't. All I could to do was sit there, trying to figure out what he meant. None of it made sense. I'd been trying so hard to hold everything together, and now it felt like it was slipping through my grasp. Before I could say anything, he stood up and went to the bedroom. I heard the rustle of sheets and the soft thud of him getting into bed. I didn't know what to do or say. I sat there for a long time, what felt like hours. The silence was killing me. Finally, I was unable to stand the distance between us any longer, so I went to the bedroom and stood in the doorway. John was lying on his side, with his back facing me. I couldn't see his face, but I felt the coldness coming from him. "John," I whispered. He didn't respond. "I can't lose you," I said, my voice cracking. "Please don't give up. We can work through this. I'll do anything." Still, there was no answer. Something inside me snapped. I was frustrated and scared of losing him. I didn't know what came over me, but I crossed the bedroom, grabbed the ring from the nightstand, and chucked it across the room. The silence was broken by the ring hitting the wall. "Do you really think this is going to fix everything?" I shouted. "This stupid ring? A symbol of what? The lies we've been telling each other?" Finally, John turned to face me, his eyes wide. Was he angry? Scared? But before he could say anything, I saw it, something sharp and dangerous glinting in his hand. He had a knife. I didn't see the motion coming. 1 minute, I was standing there, shouting at him. And the next, I felt the cold metal press into my side. It wasn't deep, but it stopped me in my tracks, clutching my wound. "John," I whispered, my voice trembling with disbelief. "What are you?" But he didn't answer. He didn't move. I was frozen, trying to understand what had just happened. My breath came in shallow gasps. In a panic, I grabbed at the knife, trying to push it away. I stumbled back, my mind racing as I tried to make sense of what happened. Then, in a blur of motion, I grabbed the nearest thing I could get, a heavy glass vase, and swung it at him. It hit him in the face, and he staggered backward, the knife slipping from his hand. But it wasn't enough to stop him. He lunged toward me, and I fought back with everything I had. My mind was full of fear, confusion, and anger. I didn't know what I was doing anymore, or how it happened. All I knew was I needed to protect myself. The next thing I knew, John was on the floor. His body was crumpled, his unblinking wide eyes staring up at me. His chest no longer rose and fell. "I didn't mean to do it. See you soon, Claire. You didn't think you could just leave, did you? I've always known where you were. That little bus station in the city, that motel with the flickering sign on the side of the motorway. I was watching you, even then. How you clutch your bag when you sleep. How you leave the TV on static to drown out the sound of your thoughts. You're clever, slippery, but not clever enough. I have to admit, you know how to cover your tracks. But you should know that you can't shake off your own tail. You're not running away from me. You're running toward me. You'll see soon. Sweet dreams. Wow. Creepy. Not sure how you got this address, but congrats, I guess. Nice to know I'm living rent-free in your head. FYI, the bus station smelled like pee, and the motel had roaches. So maybe put your stalking budget toward better accommodations next time. Only, of course, if there is a next time. But I wouldn't get my hopes up if I were you. Also, if you're going to kill me, maybe don't warn me first. That's kind of, I don't know, sloppy. Anyway, I've got to go. I'm going on a hitchhiking date with a guy named Dave. He says he's got a van. Don't worry, I checked, and there's no candy. Best, Claire. And Dave has a record. 2 assaults. 1 missing person case. You're not as sharp as you think. Do you know how easy it would be for me to get to you? To pull you from that van Before Dave even knows what's happening, the door's unlocked. Sleep tight. Very funny. Except you can't be outside because I'm writing this from the bathroom at a gas station. And I'm pretty sure the only person outside is the clerk on his smoke break. Unless you've taken up vaping? Mint flavored, I hope. But seriously, do you actually think this whole mysterious stalker act is working? Because from where I'm sitting, on a suspiciously sticky toilet seat, by the way, you owe me for that. You sound kind of desperate, following me across 3 states, tracking my every move, writing me these cryptic little notes like some kind of B-list Bond villain. Feels like a lot of effort for someone who insists they're the one in control. And if you know so much, if you've been watching me this whole time, tell me this. Why am I running? Seriously. Enlighten me. You should know why, unless you don't, which would mean you're not half as smart as you think you are. I need to stop writing now, since someone's knocking on the stall door, and I don't feel like explaining why I've been loitering in the bathroom with a notepad. Best, Claire, you're running because you're scared, but not of me. The thing you're running from is already in the room with you. Turn around. I think you've got this whole dynamic twisted. You think I'm scared of you? Cute. You've been following me, sure. But have you noticed the trail of bodies in my wake? Dave made it exactly 27 miles before he swerved into a ditch. Poor guy. Guess he shouldn't have tried to pull that knife. The clerk at the gas station. You'll see his face on the news soon. Well, most of it. So yeah, maybe I'm running, but not from you. You're not hunting me. I'm hunting you. See you soon. Interesting. You always were a quick study. I underestimated you. My mistake. But you're wrong about one thing. I'm not hunting you anymore. I'm inviting you. There's a cabin in the woods, just outside the circus. Red door, broken window. I'll leave the door unlocked. If you're as brave as you think you are, come find me. Or maybe I'll find you first. By circa, you mean the festival extravaganza, right? Cute. I'll bring wine, and maybe a shovel. See you soon, Claire. Yeah, I knew you'd come. I saw you the second you stepped into the woods. That red jacket of yours stands out in the dark like a beacon. You really should have chosen something less noticeable, or maybe you wanted me to see you. Either way, you're here now. I left a present for you. I thought I might as well give you a chance. The knife I pinned this letter down with is all yours. I trust you know how to use it. Do you feel it? The cold sinking into your bones. The silence pressing down on you. That sound behind you. The snap of a branch. That wasn't an animal. You've been so clever up to this point. So slippery. So sharp. But even the smartest prey makes a mistake eventually. And you've just made yours. Don't bother running. I'm already behind you. You're right. I felt you the moment I crossed the tree line. I knew you were there. I could almost hear your breathing. Shallow, controlled, waiting. But you made a mistake, too. You let me get too close. I know it's rude. But I'm going to have to return you kind gift. A girl can't have too many of a good thing, or it gets boring. I felt the heat of your breath on the back of my neck, and I smiled, because I'm not scared of you anymore. Not that I ever was, and you'll never get the chance to write me again. Clever girl, but not clever enough. See you soon. At incident report, missing person. Claire Marie Jenkins. Location: isolated cabin, festival extravaganza. Details: the cabin was found empty upon arrival. Blood splatters were present, but no bodies recovered. Signs of struggle. One broken window. Unidentified footprints lead into the woods. No return tracks. A single sheet of paper was discovered, pinned to the cabin wall with a knife. It read, "Not yet. Claire is presently missing at time of report. Background checks show that she must have changed her identity. Or she didn't have any family, immediate or extended. Case remains open."